This episode is proudly brought to you by the Afrocentric Group, Southern Africa's most diversified healthcare group, building a winning health offering. Hello and welcome to AI Impact Talk with me, Tembekile Mkhototo. We're back after a short break. The conversations about artificial intelligence and the South African environment continue nonetheless. And today we're going to speak to a woman who's done a lot in the space over the last 2 decades. Rapelang Rabana joining us today to speak about basically how technology and innovation are shaping meaningful change. She's been part of multiple projects that have endeavored to do this. Currently, by the way, she is the founder of Rekindle Learning, as well as co-founder of Fastforward Innovation. So lots to talk about in the next few minutes. Rapelang, welcome to AI Impact Talk. It's such a pleasure to have you with us.
I am super excited to be here.
As I was saying, you wear many hats, but today you're going to speak to us about the two that I've just referred to. Let's start with Rekindle Learning, what you do there, what the vision is, and then move on to Fast Forward Innovation. Same question.
Sure. So at Rekindle Learning, I started it on the dream that technology should be much more about just delivering content or giving people PowerPoints on a SharePoint or something like that. We need to re-engineer how you actually engage with the learning content so that people can learn smarter and more efficiently and quicker than ever before. So really what we do now is to help organizations use the concept of micro-learning and personalized learning to build real capabilities and skills for the right people at the right level at the right time in the organization so that they can ultimately perform across sales, operations, strategy, everything there.
So how do you go about the creation, right, of personalized solutions ultimately for organizations and people who exist in a bigger ecosystem that has standard requirements?
Exactly. Let's take a simple concept. So, everyone needs to learn negotiation, for example, but it's very different when it's an insurance company or a bank or an art gallery or anywhere else. And then on top of that, it's different whether you're the CEO, whether you're the manager, whether you're the assistant. And therefore, the learning experience needs to be pitched at the right level, because pitching it at the wrong level leaves people either disengaged or bored or overwhelmed as such. And then it also needs to be pitched for the right context for this country at this level in this market talking to these customers. And that's what we often forget. In the world where there's so much content online, it's not about the volume anymore, it's about the context and relevance. So we're able to work with clients by taking any of their existing documentation, having a couple of interviews with the subject matter experts, and then curating these almost TikTok-like experiences on mobile phones for people to have those bite-sized learning opportunities.
Bite-sized because, like a friend of mine likes to say, our attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. So when people like you are called in, I like one of the things that you mentioned about meeting people where they are in essence. Who typically approaches you and the team? And what level or position do they hold then in the organizational structure?
Sure. We enter organizations at different angles. A lot of the time, it's to solve a real urgent business need. So it's often the head of sales or the head of operations who's trying to drive more efficiencies or more compliance. Or it could be the head of compliance themselves in a banking environment. And then we will always collaborate with the L&D and HR teams because they obviously typically own this function. But it's really important for us to have a direct link to the business unit that is solving the need because they feel the pain. And it's not just another learning intervention. It's really enablement to solve a business problem to drive performance. Most of our customers are in financial services, banks, telcos, insurance companies, as well as some universities. Rekindle Learning also provides, other interventions such as remote secure exams. So for a lot of the professional bodies or universities on the continent that actually need to do exams remotely, you can now do that securely thanks to AI and all sorts like that. And then we also provide specific programs to universities where, for example, we're now experimenting with virtual reality experiences in healthcare, one of the healthcare universities, where you need opportunities for young people to have exposure and experiences, not just get the content, because a lot of learning happens when you are in the moment and you have an I can experience. Then we have real learning. So we're seeing the great opportunity for virtual reality in those environments so that it creates creates this place where someone without exposure can have unlimited practice, which we know is key to actually delivering competencies and strengthen these skills. And then when they go into the real world, it's not a shock. They're more ready, and it's less of a learning curve to actually operate in the real world.
And that speaks to what I was saying right at the beginning of our conversation, right? Meaningful change. Because sometimes we do these things in a very cosmetic way because it's the buzzword, the buzz phrase in the industry. But ultimately, it's precisely about everyone being able to look back in 12 months, a year, 2, 3, and saying, actually, here's what we were able to achieve.
And more than that, actually, it's also about saying, what were we trying to solve to begin with? And have we now solved that challenge? If students were not able to do a colonoscopy or whatever some of these procedures are, and are they able to now, when they go into a hospital, engage with their patients more effectively and do the procedure without as many problems? Then we've achieved our goal.
And are you finding that the clients who approach you, be it the universities, the telcos, the banks, are more open to your interventions and suggestions?
You know, most organizations claim that people are their most important asset and priority, etc. But unfortunately, South Africa has slipped into this rut hole where because of the tax credits and CETA things and BEE things, a lot of training is really tick box training. And it's not really designed to solve a specific problem. And this is where we really struggle because we're all about performance outcomes and not just tick box training. And I think maybe because people have gotten so disillusioned with the concept of training over all of this time, they no longer expect anything better. So we're frustrated when organizations have accepted the status quo of their old school LMSs, delivering content online but achieving no results. And we're like, there's actually a better way. You can actually have your original hope and dream of what training was meant to deliver. And this is why we use the slogan, learning that sticks and training that matters.
And you've done work in South Africa, you've worked in Rwanda, I believe, as well. I know in Sweden at some point.
Yes.
Scan those sort of environments for us. Excuse me. Scan that sort of length and breadth for us. And perhaps let's use this as an opportunity to reflect on the lessons from each part of the world.
Sure.
Because even Africa is not homogenous.
No, for sure not. Africa is one of the most complex. So I've had an opportunity to spend a lot of time in Sweden through the Norsken Accelerator. It's a social impact fund. Every year we take about 10 organizations around the world, and I'm so glad there's always been strong African representation. And what's really interesting there, unlike sort of the US or the UK, etc., they've got strong infrastructure to be able to support organizations, but it's less of the Silicon Valley hype. I would say it's a lot more grounded, again, in what is a meaningful impact, what is actually going to serve people and uplift communities versus chasing those valuations that we often see. And at the same time, they come with a greater sense of humility, I think, the Swedes than many other of our Western counterparts. So that's been really interesting. And what was intriguing to me was that it's not that their ideas are any better. In fact, because the funding climate is stronger there, you just have more runway as an entrepreneur to stuff up and still have money and time to recover, and then your business can go on.
Whereas cushioning, right?
Yeah, enough cushioning. You can maybe run for 27 months where I'm like, wow, if you don't get it right in 6 months in our market, you're toast, right?
A gourmet meal versus something in a microwave. Basically,
yeah. So that was a really good insight to see that it's not that their ideas were better; they had more runway given the cash they're able to raise and get funding for. In the work that we've done in Rwanda, I've done a lot more with Fastforward Innovation on the consulting side, where we've actually worked with financial services providers there to help them launch sort of digital banking services, which is another buzzword. But essentially, most of the time when people say digital banking, it could mean anything from an e-commerce platform to a micro-lending or a shopping app or anything like that. And figuring out what is relevant for your market is really the kind of work that we would do at Fastforward. Let's get clear on what is the minimum viable value that your customers are willing to wake up for and pay for before you actually launch and invest in this 20 million rand platform and build out all of these capabilities. So we run design sprints where we actually prototype these solutions like. We prototype a whole WhatsApp banking experience, and to the end user, it looks like a real thing. You put it in front of 10, 15 people in a day. You get real feedback in terms of how they understand it, what they would use, what they're willing to pay for, whether they actually want to sign up or not without you prompting or asking them or anything. And then we can actually say to a client, of these 12 features or capabilities, these were the 3 that people wanted. So in terms of where to prioritize your investment and spend, this is where to start. And these are kind of the pricing and the terms that we heard from the audience.
2 things that I want to pick up on that you just mentioned. For instance, with the Swedish example, how much time there is for innovators, let's say, to be able to do their work and perfect what they want to put out to market. Why aren't we doing enough of that? Is it money in our context? And in terms of investment then, because I think the 2 are tied together, into innovation, the AI, broader tech space, etc. Why are we so slow on the uptake?
It's a real tragedy. In South Africa, it's a country that actually has the money to make these investments. And typically in other markets, the way it works is that your big pension funds, etc., do allocate 1% or something to private equity and venture capital. And it's usually PE/VC. And what happens in South Africa is that it all goes to private equity and virtually nothing into venture capital, which is strange because these are the same asset managers that are telling their kids to study AI or whatever else, but they don't want to do VC in these markets, which is quite particular. So I don't know. I feel like there needs to be clear incentives for pension funds to actually start making larger allocations to venture capital because the pool is just too small at the moment. That's the real biggest problem. And in South Africa, it's not a lack of capital. We have the capital. It is just not being allocated into the segment. And now, I would love for that to be solved. Other African countries don't have that luxury.
Is it not because at the moment, you use Silicon Valley as an example, everyone looks at that and the amounts of money that are being made, right? And we're sort of innovating for profit. And I wonder if that's not a hindrance to both investment and the level of creativity for the people involved in the space.
I don't look at Silicon Valley and idolize it at all necessarily. I think that the market works for them, but it's also a market that serves itself in terms of the real goals are sort of valuations and exits amongst the same group of people, the same group of friends, something like that. It's not really going to necessarily translate into impact on the ground, which is why I don't obsess about it. There have been so many big hypes coming out of Silicon Valley, nothing changes in Africa.
And
So
I think that's what I meant by my question, that perhaps in us looking in that direction for inspiration, direction, aspiration, in fact, when you look at people who are turning profits in the billions of dollars, and I wonder if that does not sort of stunt, in a way, investment itself, because everyone wants a quick turnaround.
Yes, and expecting
financially, and even what we create sometimes is sort of, it's an adaptation of an idea that already exists.
Yeah, it definitely does stunt. I see what you're saying there. Because now everyone is expecting this 3-year period and you've got a unicorn and you're exiting for $1 billion and whatever else, which is so unrealistic and actually so not relevant or even useful to our lives. Which is why for me, my entrepreneurship journey has always been about it'll take me as long as it takes me. I'm here for the process, the experience, the journey of it. And if I'm not enjoying the journey, then I'm doing the wrong business fundamentally, right? And you should give yourself your own clock, your own timer, because those things out there are not entirely real. And a thought came to mind as you were speaking. I remember one of my last classes in finance at UCT. The guy was going on about an example where company A was sold to company B, and then company C was able to make improvements to company B and sell it for even more. And I was really shocked that he was saying this was a great example in business, because I was like, but nothing happened on the ground. There was no upliftment in value delivered to society, to the economy. No material change. It was just one person outsmarted other people there to get some incremental value. And that was somehow genius. And we forget that a lot of the world still plays on those things. And that's not meaningful for me at all. And you need to stick to those guns. If it's not meaningful, don't ride that tide.
And to that point, then, skilling people for the jobs of the future is key. in this conversation. Put that in context of the work that you do and how the country, and especially South Africa and the continent, will benefit if we get that right.
Yeah. The benefits can be significant because when you look at all the services that we need, from financial services, education, healthcare, agricultural services, nothing is enough yet. There's still a huge market that is underserved. There's still large numbers of businesses and business owners that are not getting everything they need to be able to perform in their businesses. And that says to me that there's material constraints in the structure and the economy. And this is where we have to use technology to overcome those constraints. If you're unable to, expand your market because your farm is in Limpopo there, you need to be part of a digital platform that allows you to engage your customers elsewhere in the world and transact in real time and get your produce out in time for you to actually get the maximum value. And it's the same for every sector. And as our middle class grows, there's a much deeper need to provide services to more people, and we can't keep doing it the same good old-fashioned way. It has its limitations. And this is why, for me, it's absolutely critical that every industry, whether you're a lawyer, accountant, a nurse, needs to understand and appreciate how have we been operating that is perhaps still a bit analog, still a bit constrained, but we don't notice it because it's the status quo. It's what we've grown up with. It's what we've accepted as the way the world works. And how do we start to suspend that kind of view and be willing to shift it and make it better or more efficient?
And ethics and regulation then come into the conversation. I know it's sometimes a gray area because the governments of the world are themselves still trying to grapple with what this new world of AI means.
Yes.
What is your take?
There is certainly a category of services that do need to be regulated. If probably everything in financial services, how you determine whether someone gets a loan or not, whether a patient gets to see a specialist or not, all of these things should be regulated. And in my sense, by that I just mean that it needs to be explainable to somebody else, so that you can audit it and assess how the decisions were made retrospectively, and then be able to annually say, all right, this is what the outputs of our AI models. Have we still been just and fair in how we have operated? That's going to become critical. And I actually don't think that that's very hard. What is really, really hard about being more ethical in the space is that as human beings who create technology and innovation, we come to the table with the same preconceptions and biases that we have as individual people. And those don't change. And if we are not creating AI-based solutions with a diverse set of teams, a diverse set of perspectives, then we are at risk of not noticing when something doesn't look right, or it's not balanced, or it's not serving a certain group, or there's implicit assumptions that are not correct. And that's where we risk violating the ethical aspects. It's not the logical stuff on paper that's hard.
It's the basics, right?
It's back in our minds and how we are managing our own biases.
And in doing that, do you think regulation is the way in which we can sort of govern the space to ensure ethical innovation?
I don't think, I don't know that regulation can go that far if you think about it. Because if you think in simple cases where, it's still much harder for Black women to get funding or credit or whatever else is. And that wasn't based on AI things. Whatever systems and structures were implicit in the architecture of the whole financial system, right? And regulation still couldn't stop that. So it's not that now that it's on AI, somehow regulation can step in, which is, the only real solution is diverse and transformed societies and businesses that are more representative of the people they serve.
So change within the people, ultimately, to address those biases. What excites you most about the space? When you look at what is coming out in terms of new technology, the communities that you're now getting to interact with, be it in corporate or elsewhere?
What really, really excites me the most is on the education and skills development space. for many young people who have grown up in environments that were under-resourced, under-stimulating, it really has significant negative consequences on their own development as people, their resilience, their own kind of adaptability in the working world. And that lack of experiences is something that costs them a lot in terms of even your first interview, how you engage, communicate, how you relate to other people. And I'm increasingly more excited about how we can use AI and virtual reality technologies to digitize those experiences, dematerialize those experiences so that it can be more accessible. So a simple example could be, how you prepare for work interviews or potential work interviews. You would need a really skilled person on the other side of the table to actually coach you and ask you the right questions and make it harder or easier depending on how you're doing. Now imagine you can put on a VR headset and someone, an AI avatar, is actually interviewing you on your area of expertise and making it harder as you're getting stronger, or making it easier to give you some more comfort and give you a space to experience the world before you go into the actual
Make it
real
as real as
interview.
possible.
Exactly. That for me is going to be truly transformative, because the education and digital learning space has been missing the experiential element for a long time. You've still been relying on having the expert facilitator in the room, and for most young people, that's a non-starter.
And lastly, what does AI mean to you? We've been asking people all season because
Yes.
there are different takes, right?
Yeah,
Even from
yeah.
those of you who work in the space. But when you wake up in the morning and you think AI, what does it mean to you?
I think artificial intelligence sounds really spooky and out there. What I really like to look at AI as is accelerated improvement. Whatever it is you were doing, in whatever function or profession you're in, there are opportunities for accelerated improvement and performance using AI. And that's the way I see it. It's not a doomsday thing. It's how do you up your game, level yourself up, and now be able to compete with the best in the world because you have access to the same knowledge and tools and resources.
Rapelang, such a pleasure speaking to you. Rapelang Rabana, by the way, founder of Rekindle Learning, as well as co-founder of Fastforward Innovation, speaking to us about how we can use, in fact, AI and technology in order to make a meaningful change in both the corporate space and even at community level. Thank you for watching AI Impact Talk. This episode is proudly brought to you by the Afrocentric Group, Southern Africa's most diversified healthcare group, building a winning health offering.